Welcome to Orange Weekly, presented by Krause Health. Alongside Chris Carlson, I'm Brent Axe. Coming up, Syracuse head coach Jim Boeheim defends his team's effort, even though their NCAA dreams are dying before our very eyes. And we preview Syracuse against Georgia Tech, a vastly different team than the one Syracuse saw a few months back. And Chris, that's where we're going to start here. Look, if Syracuse makes it to the ACC tournament championship game, they might still have a shot here, but losing to Louisville on Wednesday night all but popped their NCAA tournament bubble. They just don't have the resume at this point.
Yeah, they haven't beaten anybody in the top 50 in the country. They've beaten maybe one team that's going to make the NCAA tournament, and that's as long as Virginia doesn't fall apart, the rest of the way. Don't think they will, but beating one team that's in the field is not a good resume. Now, if they make a run in the ACC tournament, they will probably beat two other really good teams along the way. Is that enough? You'd think it would get them in the mix, but also probably no guarantee. Probably the only way to guarantee it right now is to probably win the thing.
It's a real shame, too, because in a year where the ACC is down, Syracuse gets kind of shoved aside here, but they've hovered around 5th place, 6th place in the ACC, and usually that's good enough to get you in the tournament. Let's say they win 11 or 12 ACC games if they make a run here down the stretch. They, as you mentioned, don't have the top 50 wins, just don't have the resume. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Syracuse has surprised us before, but it seems like a run of the ACC tournament championship game is their only hope left here. Chris, all the problems that Syracuse has had showed up in that loss to Louisville Wednesday night. Now, they have stayed close in a lot of these games, and the reason they've done that is their offense is made up for their defensive lapses. Obviously, we didn't see that on Wednesday night as Louisville was able to shut down some key offensive players for the Orange.
Yeah, Louisville has size and athleticism pretty much all over the floor. Teams have really, the last few games, started to focus on Buddy. They've put, one of their better perimeter defenders on Buddy. After every screen, they're doubling or hard hedging, the three guards and forcing it out of their hands. And if they force it out of their hands and they throw it inside, Syracuse's inside guys can't do anything with it. So the way that you would usually beat that defense isn't something Syracuse can do, and teams have really kind of started to figure that out and exploit them the last few games as they've gone on this losing streak.
Elijah Hughes had just 10 points against Louisville. They did a good job, Sutton in particular for Louisville, defending him. And you brought it up. They're pushing out on Buddy. They're challenging Joe. Elijah, will have a game like that every once in a while, and he's fighting through that groin injury still. So the inside play is interesting because Quincy Guerrier has really come on here in the last 4 games, but a lot of his offense, as you know, Chris, it's putbacks and rebounds. They can't quite get him the ball in the post and let him create at this point. Barama Sidibe rarely gives Syracuse anything offensively, and even Marek Dolezaj has been shut down in that spot as well. So the inside game is almost non-existent at this point.
Yeah, Marek's best games, they kind of played a stretch of teams that were small at the 4 spot. So Marek is small, but he was bigger than the guys he was playing against, so he could kind of work his way into the lane and make some shots. The last few teams, the better teams, have size at the 4 spot. Marek hasn't been able to get it going the way that he had, and like you mentioned, there's no other player that they can feed the post right now to diversify their offense. You have to like the energy from Quincy. You have to like kind of the consistency that he's played hard, the way he's gotten out of foul trouble. If you're looking towards next year, things to be optimistic about, but hard to imagine, he grows that game over the next couple of weeks.
Well, Jim Boeheim is proud of his team's effort no matter where they are at this point, and with 5 games to go, he says they're going to keep fighting. Let's hear from the head coach. It's time for Syracuse Soundbites. Chris, it's a vastly different Georgia Tech team that's going to come to the Carrier Dome on Saturday to take on the Orange. Sure, Syracuse won 97-63 back in December, but Georgia Tech was missing a couple key players in that one.
Yeah, Syracuse got off to such a hot start. I mean, they just buried Georgia Tech in three-pointers early. And Georgia Tech played without point guard Jose Alvarado and Jordan Usher, who's a talented scorer for them. Couple perimeter pieces. Obviously, we know that you need at least some perimeter guys to beat the Syracuse zone. And Alvarado is really the guy that kind of gets them organized. And you know, they've struggled with turnovers this year when they lose. That's the issue. He's their best chance at limiting them. So having those guys does create a much different matchup.
Georgia Tech's in kind of a weird spot right now. They've appealed to the NCAA. Not that they have the record or the resume to get there, but like Syracuse, that parachute that comes in the ACC tournament could put them in play for the postseason. Josh Pastner, maybe he was on the hot seat. Now he's fighting for his job again. So one way or the other, this kind of could be it for Georgia Tech, picking up as many wins as they can down the regular season. And they are playing hard. They've won a few games recently. And Syracuse, Chris, is a team that if it's Louisville here, it's Wake Forest there, if it's Duke here, if it's Georgia Tech here, everybody's kind of the same. If this team doesn't score and, you know, limit its opportunities defensively, they're going to struggle.
Yeah, I think Georgia Tech is actually pretty interesting. They came into the season with kind of high expectations. James Banks, one of their big guys, you know, went through the NBA draft process before returning to school. So they kind of had aspirations of coming back this year and making a big run. They're an older team. So you expect them to kind of give this thing a big push at the end and try to achieve what they kind of had in mind at the start of the season.
It's a 4 o'clock tip time at the Dome on Saturday between Syracuse and Georgia Tech. For now, for Chris Carlson, I'm Brent Axe. That's Orange Weekly, presented by Krause Health. We'll talk to you next time.